That's how we get to $1 million Bitcoin. It's 250,000 is a stop on the way. It's this realignment of the chessboard, and everybody on the board is going to print money to help themselves out. Okay, Bitcoin went from 70,000 to 110 in 2.5 months based on Trump. Maybe he delivers these things in the back end, but right now, where's the money? And so that's why I think that we can have a meaningful correction, shake out some people, cause people to not believe in this bull market. And then that's when we get the free money, the printed money print to go burr, and we resume the bull market and go much higher.
Arthur Hayes realizes that governments are caught in a never-ending cycle of inflation, money printing, and debt. He contends that the impending financial crisis will cause Bitcoin's price to soar to an all-time high. Hayes claims that the market is already preparing for the upcoming round of liquidity injections, which would allow Bitcoin to surpass its previous highs. The macroeconomic dynamics at work suggest that Bitcoin will eventually reach six-figure territory and beyond, notwithstanding short-term volatility. As global fiat currencies continue to depreciate, Hayes confidently claims that $250,000 per Bitcoin is only a stepping stone, and that $1 million in Bitcoin is now a realistic target. If you're intrigued by bold predictions and deep financial insights, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more engaging content. Thank you for your support and enjoy the video.
Bitcoin news cycle or market that sends it to those highs? Is it just the cycle, or is it just high beta to everything else rising?
Well, I think if you listen to what Trump and Besson and all of his lieutenants want to do, they want to rearrange the world around the U.S., take them at their word, whatever. But that requires a lot of money printing. It requires destroying the real value of government bonds in the United States. It's the only way they can do what they want to do. It requires massive amounts of bank credit creation to hand to companies to build things in America because they can't afford to do it because China's just so much better at it, right? So it requires trillions of dollars of money. It can only come via printing it. And they're going to use the ability to have the world's reserve currency to essentially reflate America. That's in America. In China, they need to do almost the same thing, a little bit different, right? They need to pump up their property market, get the plebs investing in stocks again, get them confident again, get inflation up. They need to print yuan as well. Japan needs to sell a bunch of shit and repatriate yen, and the U.S. doesn't want them to sell the stuff. So the U.S. is going to give them the money so they don't sell anything, right? Europe wants to decarbonize, but then shut off all their energy from Russia and shut off products from China and continue having the biggest welfare state in the world. So they need to print money as well. So everybody needs to do the same things to fulfill their goals. And I think the catalyst for getting into gear is, Trump and Besson have been very clear. We're going to weaken the dollar. We're going to increase credit creation, and that's going to create growth. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But at the end of the day, they're going to try, and they've been very consistent in that message. And if you listen to some of the macro analysts, I read, Zolt and Pazer and some other guys who a lot of these people listen to, what are the things they're talking about? Devaluing the dollar versus gold, terming up, telling friendly countries, hey, you have all these treasuries that mature in 10 years. Well, we're going to stuff you with a 100-year treasury. You can't sell it. I'll give you dollars for it if you need them. But if you want U.S. markets and U.S. security umbrella, you're going to take your treasuries and turn them into 100-year bonds, which is a massive devaluation. Or you're going to give us your gold and we're going to give you this piece of paper. And if you don't like it, yourself. That's what they're telling people. And so it's going to happen. And these are the sorts of things. These are the massive changes in sort of the economics of the world that will bring crypto, the only free market left in the world, and to an extent gold, to levels fiat price levels that we would not find, that are unimaginable. And so that's why I think that's how we get to $1 million Bitcoin. It's 250,000 is a stop on the way. It's this realignment of the chessboard, and everybody on the board is going to print money to help themselves out. My premise is that post the Trump election in the United States, Bitcoin has traded ahead of the fundamentals in terms of global liquidity. So gets elected, he has this whole platform of how he's going to, make America great again, print a bunch of money, get companies to invest in American productive capacity, do lots of things in the crypto space, tax space, everything. It's going to be amazing in Trump world. And everybody else around the world, to compete with America, is going to have to print money as well to help their own domestic industries, like in China and all those other countries. And unfortunately, it seems like the liquidity situation is disappointing. So moving over to the U.S., obviously the 10-year Treasury has been on a tear price down, yield up since the Fed started cutting rates in September of last year. And if you'll remember, it was quite interesting that the Fed started cutting rates right in the fall, right before an election cycle, probably to help Harris win. Obviously, she didn't. As soon as Trump gets elected, Powell's like, oh, I'm not resigning. There's been various former Fed governors, William Dudley to be specific, who wrote a very provocative op-ed in Bloomberg a few years ago saying how the Fed should actively use its power of influencing quantity of money and price to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't get elected. And he was the president of the New York Fed, the most powerful Fed governor bar the chairperson for many years. So he definitely still has an influence. And at a recent press conference in November, right after the Trump election, Powell was asked, has anything changed because of the election? And he stated that, we're looking at some new super secret economic variables that might influence the trajectory of our path, which is code words for saying, maybe we slow down, maybe we start raising rates because of the election. So I think as much as Powell tries to play the I'm not a political person game, he's very political. Him and Trump don't like each other. Trump obviously is lambasting him over Bloomberg and, the newswire saying, cut the money. I need, cheap money and lots of money to revitalize American industry. And Powell is saying, oh no, I'm here to fight inflation. So obviously inflation is still above their target. So if they were going strictly by their own self-imposed measures, they shouldn't be cutting rates at all and raising them.
Arthur Hayes draws attention to how quickly blockchain platforms are developing. With faster transactions and cheaper charges than Ethereum, Solana has gaining momentum. However, Solana runs the risk of losing ground to much more advanced technologies, much like Ethereum did before more effective platforms appeared. Even while the battle between blockchains is always changing, one thing is certain. Bitcoin is the clear winner and gains the most from the continuous devaluation of fiat money. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable post notifications for future Bitcoin, macroeconomic, and digital asset content before we go any further. Now, let's get into his powerful predictions.
On the other hand, you have a federal deficit that's exploding higher. And I know people like to cite the Department of Government Efficiency, the meme department. That isn't a department at all. It's literally just an advisory position that Trump created for his boy, Elon. An actual department requires U.S. congressional approval, and that hasn't happened yet. I have to say it won't, but DOGE is literally just an advisory body. It has no power. Yes, Elon can memify, profligate government spending as much as he wants, but that's not new news. I don't think politicians particularly care. And if you're going to get reelected in 2026, are you going to go against your seniors and the defense industry and cut their spending, which is the major 70% of government spending in the U.S. is healthcare and defense. Those aren't getting cut, in my opinion. So, the deficit isn't going anywhere. You have an antagonistic Fed. You have a Treasury maturity profile that's completely fucked up because the U.S. has to roll over something like $6 trillion of short-term debt at higher rates this year because Yellen wanted to juice the markets for Biden and Harris during their term. And so you have all this coming together. And you have a debt ceiling issue where whether it's today or tomorrow, when the day is, the U.S. government cannot net issue any new debt to fund the government. And so Trump has a choice, I believe. He can either have a crisis happen today or, in the near future, 3 to 6 months, in terms of, an antagonistic Fed, a Treasury maturity profile that is not commensurate with affordability for the government and its programs, and the inability of the banking system to buy more of this debt. And the trigger for sort of, a little mini financial crisis could be, okay, I'm going to tell Bessent, the new U.S. Treasury Secretary, that he should not run down the checking account of the government to help forestall the government shutdown. Let's have this debt ceiling fight today. Every time there's a debt ceiling fight, everyone gets all up in arms. People get afraid that the U.S. government's not going to, pay out on its bonds, which is ridiculous. Of course, they're going to raise it. It's just a political game. And it depends on which particular congressperson or senator gets their piece of pork for their district. And so once they work all that stuff out, it'll get raised. The question is, what happens in the interim? Do we get sort of a liquidity flush out, get the Fed seeing religion again? You need to print money. You need to allow the banks to put as many treasuries on their balance sheet as possible to help Trump and Bessent enact their campaign promises, stop being an asshole. The financial system, Pax Americana, the empire was going to crumble unless you give us the free money. So that's sort of my premise on the American side of things of why I think it's politically expedient for Trump to have the bad thing happen right now when he can blame it on Biden and Harris? Why have it happen in 6 months' time?
The earlier, the better.
It's your problem. And I also would add that China was supposedly reflating their economy, is going to be printing trillions of yuan to help their property market and asset markets as well. They were going to allow their currency to weaken. That's what happened from September of last year up until early January this year. And for whatever reason, there's lots of speculation as to why. I don't know why. Xi Jinping put the stops on that. The PBOC is no longer injecting buying government bonds, and they now are strengthening the currency, which is negative for fiat liquidity globally. So there you have the number 2 or number 1 largest emitter of fiat liquidity stopping in its tracks before they negotiate with Trump in terms of what the economic situation between U.S. and China is going to look like. And then the last piece would be the Bank of Japan has raised rates 25 basis points at their latest meeting last week. Again, yen is the premier funding currency of all financial assets. And so if you raise the price of yen money and the currency appreciates, people have to sell stuff. What do they sell? They sell U.S. tech stocks and they sell U.S. treasuries. So the largest 3 economic blocks and countries with regards to fiat liquidity are all either slowing down the pace of addition of liquidity, raising the price of money, or outright contracting the amount of money in circulation. So I think for a very short period of time, we have a perfect storm of, okay, Bitcoin went from 70,000 to 110 in 2.5 months based on Trump. Maybe he delivers these things in the back end, but right now, where's the money? And so that's why I think that we can have a meaningful correction, shake out some people, cause people to not believe in this bull market. And then that's when we get the free money, the printed money print to go burr, and we resume the bull market and go much higher.
Arthur Hayes makes a strong argument for why a liquidity crisis is imminent in the U.S. economy. He notes that the federal debt is out of control and that spending cuts are improbable since important government expenditures, such as healthcare and defense, are politically untouchable. The U.S. Treasury must refinance trillions at higher interest rates due to a severe debt rollover issue, and the Federal Reserve continues to be restrictive. Hayes contends that this is a ticking time bomb. Meanwhile, liquidity circumstances around the world are getting tighter. China's unexpected end to its stimulus plans has strengthened its currency and decrease global fiat liquidity. The cost of borrowing in yen has increased due to interest rate hikes by the Bank of Japan, forcing investors to sell U.S. stocks and treasuries. In summary, there is a short-term headwind for risky assets like Bitcoin, since the 3 biggest economies, the United States, China, and Japan, are all simultaneously decreasing liquidity. According to Hayes, this situation might cause a sharp drop in Bitcoin, displacing weak hands and causing temporary panic. But he contends that this is precisely what prepares the ground for the next wild bull run. The U.S. government will have to start printing money again as financial strain increases, which will bring new liquidity to the economy. When that time arrives, Bitcoin will start to rise again and reach new all-time highs. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and enable notifications if you thought his viewpoint was helpful so you don't miss any updates. We'd love to know what you think about the future of cryptocurrency markets, so please share your ideas in the comments section. We appreciate your time and hope to see you in the next video.